Hey. All right, so today I am going to be talking more about emotional eating and emotional resistance, which, hey Beth, which is a topic that, hey Cindy, that everybody I think really needs some more info on. Okay, so we're going to be, sharing. It's crazy. I've missed you too, Beth. I'm posting. Hey, Angela. I know, Janet. I'm excited to see you next week. Teresa, I'm excited to see you this weekend. I get to see all of you lovelies. Okay. I think last group, and then we'll get started. So for those of you that are popping on, like I have notes here. Like I sent myself an email because I'm like, this is what I'm talking about today. Okay. So one of the things that I noticed that kind of happens when the busyness occurs in life is emotional resistance, because we go to the highest priority item, which should be ourselves and of course our family, but it's usually things that, I know, Blair, I can't wait. I'm so excited for all of you guys who have already signed up. And I'm going to talk more about that for people who have no clue what I'm talking about, but I will share more as we kind of move on. But I want to give you guys some more deets on this, this emotional resistance and how it rears its ugly head. And so what ends up happening is when you kind of start and you're like, okay, I'm on it, I'm ready. And then life happens, right? And when life happens, you feel like you're totally off of your game. And so this is where it's so important that you have new skills and new tools for life hacks. So, and that's a lot of the stuff, because Janet's been in there before, Beth has been in the group before, and if they've been super busy or whatever, it's like, oh, then they know, okay, I've got to use my tools, right? Because that's what we get in the group program, is you get a bunch of tools, and we want something that's easy to implement, right? Because if we have to reteach you a 5-step model, then you're like, oh gosh, maybe I won't even start this because it's just something that's too difficult, right? Hey, Pauline. So what we want is to have some tools that you can grab onto when life, hey, Christine, when life kind of takes you off by the seat of the pants. Hey, Jeanette. So essentially emotional resistance comes up because it's that little voice that says, I can't. And there are a couple different things behind that. So is it I can't, or is it I don't want to? And so there's a whole different set of circumstances versus I can't, which is it's not possible, versus I don't want to, which is I'm not willing to, right? And so our willingness to change, our willingness to do something different is part of the behavioral model of change. And that's something else that I teach on as well. And that's because everybody wants to change, but is everybody willing to do what it takes for change? Now, if you guys have been reading my email, right? Right, you don't, Teresa's honest. She's I don't want to, right? So that's the thing, is you've got to be willing to put in the work. But if you guys have been reading my emails, or, I sent an email out, I think it was last week, and I talk with my hands a lot, sorry. I can see it on the replay or the screen over here, about it being hard. Well, there's two parts of hard. And again, I'm going to go back to emotional resistance. I can't versus I don't want to, I'm not willing to. But when it comes to actually making the change, right? If you believe it's hard, it's going to be hard, right? So that's like mindset tip number 1. If you tell yourself over and over and over, this is going to be hard. Hey, Linda. So if you guys were to walk outside right now and walk up a hill, and you start to tell yourself, oh my gosh, this is so hard. Oh my gosh, this hill, it's so hard. Then it's going to feel harder because we're training our brain on the perception of what it's going to feel like. Whereas if you were opposite of that and were more encouraging of yourself, which I know the negative self-talk takes over, but this is part of the training, right? If you're able to start training yourself, not saying this is easy because your mind might go, oh, that's total BS. Hey, Leanne, then what you've got to do is start to say things that are like, okay, almost there. Okay, you've got this. Okay, keep going. Okay, 5 more steps. Okay, 10 more steps. Okay. Oh my gosh, this is getting easier. Because if you start with this is easy right off the bat, your brain's gonna call BS on you. Your brain is gonna call you out on what you feel is a lie. And so how you start to trick your brain, essentially, is through encouragement. However, a lot of these deep-seated issues of a lack of encouragement or discouragement or shaming or guilt or a lot of negative thoughts and feelings come from either our childhood or sometimes parents or sometimes people who brought us up or sometimes a spouse. It can come from a lot of different places, training where I'm not good enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not good enough. And so if you repeat that long enough, if other people repeat that to you long enough, how are you going to feel? Hey, Angie. So what I want to kind of train you guys on is, of course, changing the dialogue that's going on in your head, but that's also going to work on your emotional resistance. Because the first thing that pops up in emotional resistance is, I have to give something up. So we're already starting out with a FOMO, right? Fear of missing out. But they get to have cheesecake and they're having cookies and all of that kind of stuff. And so the FOMO makes you think, okay, I'm missing out. I can't have X. And so what are you training your brain? Essentially, reverse psychology. Hey, Therese, reverse psychology. You're training your brain, I can't have that, I want that. And what do we know about reverse psychology? If you tell yourself you can't, you want it even more. So how you work on the emotional resistance with this is, of course, to create berry-friendly meals, snacks, things that you like, of course, and things that your family will like. And I also know that there's potential barriers there and time issues there. But here's the thing. This is where the life hacks come in. This is where the life hacks come in. And this is where you, and maybe you guys have seen me say this on live streams before, I don't know. I probably said it in the book study. So if those of you are in the book study, you've heard me say this. But it's like when we take on too much for our brains too early, we overwhelm ourselves and quit. When we take on, I'm going to say it again, when we take on too much too early, we overwhelm our brains and we quit because we think we can't. And the truth of the matter is, and I have a lot of clients that are overachievers, and what ends up happening is they're like, oh, you just want me to do one thing? Like that's so easy. I can do 5 other things. And I'm like, slow your roll, time out. Because you want to do one thing really, really well. Yet, if you're trying to do 10 things, you can't do one thing really, really well because you've split your time, you've split your energy, you've split your attention 10 different ways. And that's part of the problem. So in the post-op lifestyle, you're taught like, okay, and they start you off good. When you start off right after surgery, here's your liquids, Here's your soft foods, right? So clear liquids, full liquids, soft foods, then you're kind of, eased back in to full solids, right? So that's like a 4-week, 5-week, depending on your surgical center, anywhere between a 4 to 6 week process. I have one client who's pretty new who is 2 weeks post-op, and she's just now going to soft foods. So everybody's different. But my point here is that they ease you in slowly, right? And then you're back in life. You're back into real life day to day. And there may or may not have been an education about prepping and planning. You may or may not have an education about prioritizing your time, your meal prep, your meal plan. You may or may not have gotten an education on tracking or why it's important. You may or may not have gotten an education on why protein. Like everybody says 60 grams or 80 grams or however many, but nobody ever tells you why. At least I don't think. And the reason is, well, you're going to heal faster. So it's going to help with healing. Amino acids are the building blocks of protein or the building blocks of muscle mass, sorry. Amino acids are the building blocks of muscle mass. And so you're going to retain muscle because as you lose fat, you're also losing muscle. And they want you to retain as much muscle as possible because muscle burns fat. So the same reason why they don't want you working out for usually the first 3 months. And again, things that like rules that you hear, but you don't know the why. I think that the why is important to understand. So, and I'm going to circle back around. I know this is tangential, but for a lot of people, it's like you get told what to do. You don't know the why behind it. And then you're so overwhelmed because you're like, okay, water. Okay. I need to hold on. I need to not do the fitness, but I need to walk. Okay, I have to walk. And I need the protein. And okay, not too many carbs. And so this is something that you may not have put into practice right away. And so you're kind of literally working on like 5 things. Like, oh yes, I have to take my supplements, right? Oh yes, I need to get my water in. And I think I might have left my water in the other room. So I'll have to get that in a second. I have to get my water in. I have to get this amount of protein. How am I going to get that amount of protein in? They give you a food list, but it might not have been anything that you've ever eaten before, or you don't know how to put a really healthy meal together because nobody goes through that with you. And then on top of that, you're integrating back into real life. You have a family, you have a job, you have all of these things, and it's like, here you go. And nobody really teaches you or trains you how to put this all together. And so for some people, what happens? Some people get on the internet and they do great research. Some people go back to old habits. And some people will make good choices like, okay, I'm going to get the grilled nuggets at Chick-fil-A, or I'm going to get a grilled chicken when I go out, right? But then some people go back to old habits because they haven't really worked on or mastered some of the behavioral components, which is how do I take care of me, right? And so how do I take care of me is part of the organization. It's part of the priorities. It's part of the planning. It's part of time management. It's part of avoiding procrastination or overcoming procrastination, right? These are things that nobody ever talks about in the post-op life. And yet it's so essential to your post-op life because it's life. It's life, right? And so when emotional resistance comes up because you're like, oh my gosh, that's so much work. I don't want to. But what if you could really learn these things, not overwhelming, not all at once, but in a one step at a time format? Okay, there's that. There would not be as much emotional resistance because you would feel like you got there. You feel like you could get there over time. And I agree. I wish all centers taught us the same thing, right? But they don't. So the other thing is the readiness for change, the willingness for change, the desire to do something different than how you've always done it, right? Because you get this list of things that you need to change post-op, but nobody tells you how. Nobody tells you how to figure it into your life. It's just like poof, you just do it. But nobody tells you how to do it. So you got to figure it out, right? So there's a commitment that comes with it. Preaching to you. Hey, Trisha. So there's a practice that comes with it. There's a commitment that comes with it. Hey, Cindy. So there's a commitment that comes with it because you've got to take back control over your life ultimately. And again, you've had the surgery and you've had this experience, yet in order to take back control over your brain, over your body, over your behaviors, all of this, everything all at once, too overwhelming. So you've got to break it down one step at a time. You've also got to be committed to doing one thing at a time over time, right? And if you take on, again, I'm going to say it again, if you take on too much all at once, you become overwhelmed, and then what ends up happening, you're like, screw this, I quit. And then you're kind of right back where you started. So I want to encourage you not to quit, but moreover, encourage you to look at how you can take baby steps to kind of picking yourself up where you are. It may be water, it may be meal prep, it may be getting your protein in, it may be your supplements, and it may be your sleep. And if you guys haven't heard me preach about this, I am going to preach about it. But your sleep, and I had attended a conference a couple years ago where a bariatrician was talking, hey Dawn, hey Mia, hey Donna, and he said the two biggest factors for regain are stress and sleep. Too much stress, not knowing how to deal with it, not managing it properly, right? So not having a stress management plan because, and even on the ASMBS website, because I was looking at it, it was under mental health. I wonder if I still have it up here. And I was like, oh yes. Yeah. Stress and sleep and the lack of sleep. And it says here, sleep and stress. Like, anyways, two of the things are on there, but moreover, eating habits are frequently affected by emotions, stress, boredom, mindless eating, or even eating disorders. They are very common, but not always obvious. If you find yourself eating to relieve stress or eating when you're full or not hungry, you should seek additional help from your surgeon, qualified therapists, or behavioral therapists, right? So that's what's important. And so sleep, a lack of sleep, because less than 6 hours of sleep a night, you're prone, and I'm not saying, like, don't take this as gospel, but take it as like wisdom, okay? You're prone, you could, yes, the stress, yes. So you're prone, if you're not getting adequate sleep, you're prone to potentially eating 400 more calories a day. Sleep is hard to come by when you work full-time, have kids, a husband, and go to school full-time, stress to the max as well. I'm 7 weeks out post-op ESG. Amy, let me tell you, I have kids, I work full-time, I'm finishing my doctorate, I own a business, and I do support group meetings, donate my time. Girl, I feel you. Like, I feel you. And you do need to sleep. And the one thing that I will not compromise is sleep. And that's the other reason why you probably need a stress management plan, because if you're stressed to the max and you're then you're likely not sleeping because of the stress. So it's like, which comes first, the stress or the lack of sleep? So I believe it about the 400 calories, I'm sure is my case far worse than me. So here's the thing with the 400 calories. If you're trying to stay awake, and again, this is all, should we take amino acid supplements? Not necessarily, because all the amino acids that you're getting should be in the protein that you're eating. So all of the amino acids that you need should be in the protein that you're getting. And again, if you guys are taking protein supplements, make sure that you're taking whey isolate, because that's the most pure form. Some of the others where it's a whey blend or like collagen blend or other kind of blends, they may not digest in your system in a timely manner. So it's important that you have, unless you have a whey allergy, and then I can direct you to someone who knows more about that than I do, because I'm the mindset person, not the protein person. But in terms of like specifics. So when you have trouble feeling asleep, it's useless to fight it and get up. Okay, so there are a lot of different things you can do for the sleep, but let me go back to what happens when you don't sleep. Hey, Janet. And so that is my favorite brands of protein. I would say, and I know not everybody's a fan, but I love Undri. I've had it from the get-go from my surgical center. I have tried Devotion Nutrition. I like them. I also like the one that Patricia uses, which is Nitro Tech by Muscle Tech. They're really good. I also love Isopure. I had been using Isopure even before as a pre-op, which is really good. So all of those I like. So those I would say are my favorite brands. So that's okay, Beth. There's going to be a replay, so don't worry. I'm trying to answer the questions. Okay. So the sleep thing is, if you're tired, and usually it happens at like 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon when you have a slump, what happens? So people are typically trying to stay awake for work or stay awake to do something, then they're reaching for a snack, or they're reaching for the vending machine, or they're reaching for something. So great, Angela, I hope you like it. Hey, Stacy. So when you reach for something and you're tired to keep yourself awake, like that's your body's way of preserving itself. So that's just, it's a natural thing to do, but it's not good if you're trying to lose weight, right? Because your brain is like, we just need to keep you awake. And so it's the subconscious you, not the conscious you, right? So it's kind of like that primal behavior that it's like, okay, maybe I'll just get something to eat, and you don't even recognize it. So coffee, and then some coffees can be also high in sugar and carbs. So coffee is something people go for, chocolate are some things that people go for. And then of course some people just go for like, you know, carbs or other things. And then that's where, if you start that pattern on a consistent basis, what ends up happening is that becomes your pattern of behavior every time you're tired, right? So whatever we do regularly, it's not what we do once, and this again is in my book, but I always quote Darren Hardy, who wrote The Compound Effect, brilliant book. But he says, it's not what you do once that makes a difference, it's what you do day in and day out. So it's not one coffee that you had, you know, or one piece of chocolate that you had on a random day. It's the subsequent chocolate, it's the subsequent coffee, it's the subsequent lack of sleep, right? So all of that behaviorally adds up over time. So again, it's not what happens once, it's what happens, like the domino effect. So that's important to remember. And so with the stress, also what happens is you want to soothe yourself. If you don't know how to soothe yourself with other tools, because either you may have never been taught, or you may not know how to soothe yourself, or as a child, your family might have told you, you know, suck it up, then what may have happened, I have to get my water, so I'm having to move around. So what may have happened is you never really learned how to soothe your emotions. And so what ended up happening was you just reached for food because that was comfort, right? Will taking the wrong vitamins make you tired? Ooh, potentially. But I know that supplementation is important, but I don't know. I will tell you Flintstones is not good. And bariatric supplements are necessary. I've talked to a lot of professionals in the field, and if God forbid, Leanne, something happened to you where you weren't getting the adequate supplementation, your doctor would be liable, legally liable. If he recommended Flintstones or a vitamin that is not a bariatric vitamin, he would be legally liable. And so that's the scary part, is that there are doctors that are recommending these things that are not healthy for post-ops, and that's what's super scary. And the other thing to recognize is sleeve patients will absorb more than an RNY. An RNY will absorb more than a DS. And a DS is a duodenal switch, if you guys don't know what that is. It's the more extreme surgery. So sleeve, there's sleeve, RNY, and DS. So those are the 3 surgeries that I would quote the most. Makes so much sense. I snack in the afternoon when I'm tired, stressed, but not hungry. Yes. So here's the thing, Beth, and here's your tip, okay? Tool number 1, get up and get moving. I know you might be at your desk. You probably can't do jumping jacks, but if you could work yourself up and walk around the office and like move your body, then that's something that would get you like a little more energy. I have taken Flintstones for 5 years. Have you had your labs drawn? Because that's the true test. And maybe you have. So it also may make a difference if you're a sleeve. But if something happens to you, they're legally liable for recommending them. And no disrespect to your doctor, but those are ASMBS guidelines. Those are not my guidelines. Those are ASMBS guidelines. My brain goes. The American Society for Metabolic and Bariatric Surgery. I always want to call them something else, but it's the American Society for Metabolic and Bariatric Surgery. Those are ASMBS guidelines. They should be recommending supplementation, and that may be why your labs are not so good, because of those, you know. It means they can get sued. It means that if they recommended Flintstones and you had supplementation issues that led to an autoimmune disorder, or led to, and I don't know that you could prove that, but you'd probably have to have a really good lawyer. But if they recommended these things and there was a way for your lawyer to prove that, okay, this is what was recommended, this is what was given by the nurse, you could sue the doctor, especially since I've known people who have always, who have had, where they've had facial issues or different things that have happened in their body where the nutritional deficit was so great. So that's something to be aware of. Are you a sleeve patient, Janet? So, and that's the other thing. So here's the thing, Janet. They may have always been good for you, but for Trisha, they're not. And for somebody else, they may not. So the point here is teeth problems. Exactly. Angela said. So across the board, they can't, the reason that bariatric supplementation is necessary is because across the board, it's not going to be the same thing for everyone. So labs are good. Can you recommend a bariatric vitamin for RNY? So I'll be honest, I take Bariatric Advantage. You can take Celebrate. You can take Fit for Me. There's like 4 or 5 different bariatric companies. Bariatric Pal has a new Bariatric 1 vitamin that you can take. So Bariatric Pal has vitamins. There's, you had RNY. Bariatric Advantage, Celebrate, vitamins. So you want a company that is that does have that follows the ASMBS guidelines. And so usually the bariatric vitamin companies do. And I can post the links later if you guys are interested. So OptiSource, is OptiSource a bariatric vitamin? I know the other one is another one that's a good bariatric vitamin is, and I love ProCare Health. ProCare Health has amazing, they have Fusion, Bariatric Fusion is a good one. See, there's so many different companies. So that's what's important to know. Okay, thanks, Rodney. Right, OptiPurity, the different, my curiosity, what I need to research and then take my vitamins, which not to take together. I don't even know where to get this info. Okay, So, Elizabeth, that would be a good question for Patricia likely, but I will say this, you don't want to take your calcium and your iron at the same time. You have to take them separately. So I do know that. Your multi, if it has iron in it, you're going to take that separate from your calcium, like a couple hours from one another. So that's, and the different surgeons' recommendations may be based on the different reps that come into their area. So different reps for the vitamin companies come into the doctor's office and educate the doctors on what kind of vitamin supplementation, and then that's usually the vitamin supplement that the doctor recommends. Celebrate always has great deals and weekly videos. It can't hurt to try something new. You're totally worth it. And I will tell you guys this, ProCare Health has a dark chocolate calcium. It is amazing. And they also have a salted caramel chew. So it's like you can mix and match too. You can have a like a calcium from this one and a multi from this one. So anyways, I'm getting off track. So 2 hours between iron and calcium. Thank you, Lauren. Okay. So going back to like readiness for change and taking on too much, kind of going back to that. This is why this is a 2-part live stream, guys, because I know I can't fit it all in because you guys are going to ask me questions and I definitely want to answer them. Okay. So readiness for change, the difference is in some people who are not willing to change or really struggling with change is those who are committed to the outcome and those who really have a clear understanding of their why. And so I would probably say that maybe it was 6 weeks ago, a month ago. I'll post it, Trisha, because there's a whole bunch of stuff that you might need to look for. I have a PDF download and I'll post it in the Bariatric Mindset Mavens Facebook group so that you know what to look for. So if you're not in that group, go ahead and request to join because that's where I'm going to put it because I don't think I can post files on my Facebook page. So come on over to the Mavens group and I'll post it in there because I have a list of things to look for. Okay. So the difference is your commitment and your why. If you're not committed, so 6 weeks ago, I wrote an email about how some of us are living our lives like that movie Bird Box, where everybody's like, okay, all right, and they're bumping into things all over the place because you're walking through life like with this blindfold on. Because if you were to be conscious and to be observant of your behavior and what's going on, then you would likely need to change it. But some people are on autopilot or they're bumping into things or they have these blinders on because they fear is huge. They fear that they're going to have to do something that's too hard. Or it goes back to what I said at the beginning of the video, the FOMO, the fear of missing out. Okay, so I'm going to miss out. I'm not going to be able to do X, or I'm not going to be able to do Y, or I'm not going to be able to have this. And so your fear of missing out becomes greater than your why. And so what we need to do is create your why, your commitment to yourself that becomes greater than the FOMO. Because, and just last week in my group program, I was talking with a member and we were talking about vacation and vacation eating and how people get way off track on vacation. And then sometimes when you come back, those habits come back with you. And so what's important to recognize is that the food is not going anywhere. It's not going anywhere. But we've got to make a conscious choice in the moment. Like, okay, I want this. And your brain's like, ooh, I want this. And so one of the things that we've got to work on is this is always going to be available to me. But today is not the day that I'm available for it. Today is not the day that I'm having it. Because today I'm committed to my journey. Not that on a day that you're going to have it, you're not committed to your journey. But if you start letting that in every single day, like I said earlier from that quote, then all of a sudden that becomes your day-to-day. And your day-to-day then creates regain, and regain creates what? Back to where you started. And I know all 30 of you guys watching and more on the replay don't want to go back to where you started. So What happens though is autopilot limbic brain, that very basic, you know, primitive brains like, oh, gotta have it, want it, and you're like, so conscious brain up here, that higher brain, doesn't even have a chance because you haven't flexed that enough. But the primitive brain has been happening, right? Okay, I'll send the link, Trisha. That primitive brain, right? That habit of having things all the time. Thank you, Lauren. Right? Make the choices that are the best, right? Best for you not only right now, but best for you for the long term. But again, if your brain is focused on, hey, Jared, if your brain is focused on missing out, we were just talking about vitamins like 5 minutes ago. Anyways, if your brain is focused on missing out and that's what you're focused on, just remember what you're focusing on, thank you, expands. So what you focus on expands. So if you're focused on the FOMO, we were talking about the different vitamins. Somebody was asking about Flintstones and I was saying it was a no-go. And I was telling them that the vitamins that are recommended are the ones that are ASMBS guidelines. Me? Yes, I'm a sleeve patient, Rachel. 5.5 years out, 200 pounds down. Whoop, whoop. So I'm also a psychotherapist, PhD candidate, getting my PhD in psychology and bariatrics. So thank you guys. Hey, Helena. Okay. I'm like all over the place. Coming back. Okay. So if you're constantly flexing that habit, that old habit of I need it, I want it, I have to have it, then that is like almost like the basic philosophy that you're living by. Instead, so awesome. That's awesome. If that's the basic philosophy that you're living by, then what needs to change is that you're practicing putting your conscious mind back in control. So when you put your conscious mind back in control, right, then you're teaching yourself over time to actually contemplate, wait a minute, what's going on here? Like, what are the choices? What am I committed to? And so that part of that comes with mindfulness and being present in the moment and turning off the autopilot brain. So what do you mean be careful what I'm saying? So I'm talking about ASMBS guidelines for supplementation, which is on the website, and different bariatric vitamins. So, okay. What is important, okay, when you're changing the behavior is that you know what you're committed to and you know your long-term why, right? Love you too, Joan. That you know your why. You need to know why you're doing what it is that you're doing. Okay? What is the outcome that you desire, right? And so when you're ready to change, when you're ready to take action, that's when the emotional resistance pops up. That's when the emotional resistance pops up, right? Yes, and I'm an integrated health practitioner with the ASMBS. So I'm right there with you. So, and you're right, everybody's different and it doesn't apply to everyone, and I totally agree. But that's something to be important, and what I said earlier is absolutely true. And so the supplementation does matter. So absolutely. So, okay. So getting upset at yourself for the same behavioral cycle, right, doesn't help you change. It just makes you angry and resentful of yourself. It just makes you angry and resentful of yourself. And so how you change that pattern is really by taking a step back and recognizing what needs to change within you. right? Because your readiness to change, and if we're going to talk about the different stages of change and the readiness for change, right? There's that pre-contemplation where you're thinking about it, but you're not completely sure. The contemplation where you're like, okay, I might be ready. And then the determination is you're close to taking action. And then there's the action phase. The struggle that people have, though, is when triggers come in and they don't know how to handle the triggers. They don't have a replacement tool, right, to handle the behavioral triggers. That what ends up happening is they go back to what they knew. They go back to the habit, because these thoughts come quickly, right? And your ability to respond to something. So another way of thinking about it is using the word responsibility. Your ability to respond in a 2-second situation, right? So your ability to respond comes with what tools you have in your toolbox. If you don't have adequate tools in your toolbox, you could potentially go back to what's comfortable. You could potentially go back to what you knew. You could potentially just say, screw it, this is too hard. And then that becomes very frustrating. I appreciate you noting the areas of the brain. I was a TA for neuroanatomy. It makes it very concrete. You're so welcome, Dana. So 3.5 post-op sleeve. I bought your books and I'm so thankful for you. I'm thankful for you too, Joan. I hope that this is helping. So the important piece in terms of the behavior and recognizing the emotional resistance that you have is what stage are you in and what are you wanting to grow? And what happens is in the moment when you have the triggers or you have the temptation, right? If you don't have the toolkit, and it's not just specific tools, but you don't have the mental preparedness to handle that, right? Then what ends up happening is you go back to a lot of the behaviors that you had pre-op. And so why I'm sharing this with you today is that commitment is part of it. This is a journey of you committing to you and your post-op lifestyle change. And so the tools that you have in your emotional toolkit or your mental toolkit, right, are that you've got to strengthen that higher mind. You've got to strengthen that higher brain, because the primitive brain, if the higher brain isn't flexed enough, then that lower brain just takes over. So a lot of people have underlying issues, but lots of psychological prep helps prior to surgery. Yes. And your EFT video has really helped my stress. Great tool, and thank you. You're welcome. And Stacy, it's about strengthening the higher brain. It's about putting it into practice. And so it's not what you do once, it's what you do every day. And so it's practicing that and also digging deeper. So all of that helps. And, you know, the other thing that helps is post-op psychological work. Post-op, whether it's mental health or behavioral coaching, all of those things help, because you need to know how to put these things into practice. And so what I see frequently is people who go for all or nothing. If I can't do it all, I'm a total failure. 5.5 years. So I'm a total failure. And so what ends up happening is if people feel like I'm a total failure, then they quit. Okay? Or they go back and they're like, why bother? And so that all or nothing thinking is not really going to get you to where you want to go. And that's why you've got to keep trying and keep trying and keep trying, because it's not one time that you try that you're going to get it. It's really the 10th time or the 20th time or the 30th time. And it's a practice that you have over and over and over. And so that's what's cultivated. And so what you can work on, hey Indu, is that first time that you're like, yes, okay. And so there's hope there, but you've got to keep practicing it. What is the name of your book? I'm 5 years post-op sleeve, 100 pounds lost, regained 50 pounds, stress and life got in the way. It's called Bariatric Mindset Success. Bariatric Mindset Success. So part of the process is not only shifting the behavioral patterns, but also shifting how you see them, like what I was talking about earlier. Stress, disappointment, and frustration are the feelings that led me down the rabbit hole. You're teaching me tools to shift my mind. Absolutely. And so it all starts with, how are we thinking about things? If we see ourselves like a failure, I'm 15 years out and still successful. That is fantastic, Rachel. That is fantastic. I think what we really need is a lot of successful post-ops, a lot of individuals who are really sharing the passion for this field, because there's a local nurse that, Francine, how many years out is Ginger? Is she 11? So that I work with a lot at a local hospital, and she's, I think, like 11 years out or 15 years out, and she's absolutely amazing. So we do a lot of work together, and it's really fantastic. So I think our community really needs a lot of people who also know the field and who are also proud. I'm 2 years out from sleeve. I'm really working hard on myself to stop the bad habits which are causing my regain. I love your books and I appreciate your Facebook group. Oh yeah, it's more like 17. It's been most helpful. I'll keep working on my mindset. Awesome, Julie. Keep practicing, because that's what it's all about, not giving up. It's just, we've got to keep on that retraining. And so I think it was just like what Rachel said, everybody's different. And so there are people who don't need any post-op like mindset work, and awesome for them. But I knew in my journey that I had to do a lot of mindset work, which has led me down this road. I never thought 5.5 years ago that I would be here and doing this work, but it's something that I have a huge passion for, and something that I think there are tons of patients who don't know where to turn, because there are not a lot of individuals really talking about all of the mindset tools that people need to really live a successful post-op life. Because there are a lot of us that do have like the organizational tools or the behavioral tools, but it's so much more than what you eat, calories in, calories out. It's also more about the practice, right? The practice of living. And I can't tell you how many times I've seen people, Trisha says, I need a whole new brain. No mind work. Mind was so broken. I had no idea. It's just a tool. Yeah, it is just a tool. And so we have to use the tool effectively by changing what's going on in here. And I did not coin the phrase, but somebody else, I know it's been around for a while, it's stomach surgery. It's not brain surgery. So we really need to work on the behavioral component, and also dig deep and figure out what kind of caused a lot of the issues to begin with. Sometimes it's childhood trauma. Sometimes it's, poor habits. And sometimes it's other behavioral issues that we've had. And so we can train ourselves to do those things, to live differently, to be differently. Right. And Janet says, that's why I'm here, to get new tools. Okay. But again, shaming yourself for not having a good set of tools that's not the answer either. And so this is why practice, cultivating new habits, but not just habits, but really retraining how we think about things, really retraining, what it is that we're drawn to, like what the triggers are. So I've not had surgery. I'm curious if there's anyone would give me in wisdom before I make the decision. My highest weight is 256, kept 30 off past 1.5 years, committed to myself, been doing the internal work for the past few years. My goal has been 200, ultimate goal 160. Appreciate you for sharing your journey. So what I would say is, there's so many things that I could share, but I think that surgery is a very personal decision. It's something that I think you need to go over in terms of with your medical team. Surgery was, and I can only speak for myself and say that it was a lifesaver for me. It was something that I knew I was not going to lose it long term, because I would lose and gain the same 50. And I had both a commitment issue and just the metabolic, my body just wouldn't go below a certain weight. And so for me, bariatric surgery was like a biochemical reset, and I had to get my mind right after. So if other people want to answer why you've had the surgery or why it might be a good fit, you know, I'll let other people give their feedback on the surgery themselves. I can only answer it in terms of what I felt it did for me. But I will tell you, and you'll hear people say this, and it's such an incorrect fallacy, is it's not the easy way out, because you have to do work after. Because this is a lifestyle change. It is not a diet. It is lifestyle change. It is long-term, lifelong, and it's work. There's tracking involved. There's patience involved. There's where you really want to, again, we want to flex the follow through. So, and that's the other thing that we see that Trisha was just talking about, is I see a lot of people in my groups and in my programs that have lost a parent, are going through a health issue, have a family member that had a health issue, or something is going on in their lives, work, relationships that are causing stress. And then we go back to what are the stress issues and how are people dealing with stress? And so in order to properly process your stress, you need new tools, because if you return to food, then that's where the regain happens. If you turn to the food for comfort or to stuff down the emotions, right? That's essentially emotional eating, stress eating, bored eating, mindless eating, right? So food can also be a stimulus. I see that a lot with my ADHD clients, where food is both a habit, but food is also a stimulus. So it's important to address, you know, what is food? Is it a comfort? And so understand the triggers. And something that I know, food is everywhere. If we go to a funeral, there's food. If we go to a baby shower, there's food. If you go to a wedding, there's food. And so having a free-for-all food doesn't mean that it's there for us to eat, because we still have to use that conscious brain that says, I need to put myself back into control. I have to make this this decision, right? The bottom line is figuring out the underlying cause and mentally dealing with it. It's not brain surgery, which would be easier for a change. I totally get it. Yes. So how we do this is we're not going to be able to observe our thoughts 24/7. That's impossible. What is important is that the mindfulness component, that we start to observe what great speaker, but can't tell you're a newer weight loss patient. It's very different when you're 10 years plus out. Oh, I believe it. And I'm excited for my next 5 years. I got my life back. It's opened up my life. I feel better. Type 2 diabetes gone. Sleep apnea gone. So what's really important is that you start to practice mindfulness, right? Observing your thoughts, mindfulness in the present, and being mindful of these different experiences with food, right? So that you can make that conscious choice. And instead of that food calling your name, and instead of the food having the control, you put yourself back in control and start to practice, you know, what is this going to get me, right? So these are how is this growing me? So we need to create new thought patterns. I eat out of habit sometimes and places, and it's driving me nuts. So this is where we need to practice the awareness and have, right, food for fuel, right? Internal system inside for sure. So what's important is, how is this growing me, right? Is this food going to get me to where I want to go? And so if your only thought pattern is the FOMO, if your only thought pattern is how it's going to feel in the present, you're really kind of, you're just in the limbic brain. You're just in the very primal brain. Whereas I'm a licensed professional counselor, and I'm a PhD candidate in psychology. And my dissertation is on lifestyle change post-bariatric. So those are my credentials. So the habits of your lower primal brain and what you've taught yourself over time are what's going to take over, okay? And so we need to create new thought patterns. What is this getting me? How is this growing me? And then when you focus on your FOMO, what is happening, right? So I'm 14 years out. This makes perfect sense. I wish I would have known this stuff years ago. So this is the kind of stuff that I don't think is taught out there, which is why I'm teaching it. And because I do a lot of clinical research, and because I'm reading a lot of clinical research articles, bariatric obesity articles, that's where I've kind of pulled all of this together along with my own practice of helping people post-op. So when we focus on our desires, right, what do we get? When we focus on the FOMO, what do we get? So what's important for us to recognize, again, what you focus on expands. Are you focused on the FOMO, the fear of missing out, or are you focused on the life that you want to lead? And so in the moment, what you're focused on may be what's right in front of you, but what you want to focus on is the commitment back to yourself and your why you're doing this. And that's why we want to create this greater why, this big why of why you're doing this for yourself, what you get in the long term, because this is what's going to gain you that long-term life. This is what is going to really change the game for you. Okay? So what you focus on expands. You want to take back control over your brain, hold yourself accountable, and find a group that has your back. Okay? So if you do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always got. Thank you, Cynthia. You're welcome, Sally. You need to hold yourself accountable over and over. And different people need different things. This lifestyle is a commitment to you. The goal is mastery over your brain, and your brain is your master computer, right? So in order to change your behavior, you've got to change how you think about things. You have to change your beliefs about what you can or you cannot do. And which comment is that? You can never hear this too many times. I'm so happy to have this post-op therapy. I'm thankful for the Barry team for giving me the surgery. I was not given support to figure out the mindset success. So you taught this at your clinic. Great, that's good. Okay, so the lifestyle commitment to you. The goal is mastery over your brain. Brain is your master computer, and in order to change your behavior, you must change your brain and beliefs about what you can or cannot do. So this also goes back to what we talked about in the beginning, which is, what do you believe about yourself, right? And so not having that victim mentality, not having that defeatist mentality, but taking back control over what you want for yourself. Taking back control over your primitive brain, right? And limitations only exist in the mind. And one of the things that's really important, and when I tell people, is people who, and I see this a lot within the bariatric community, oh, I can't, you know, all of this I can't. And yet I see people all the time who are paraplegics or in the Paralympics, and they're doing things. And so the difference is that we do have the ability. But the limitations that exist are not in our body, but they're in our minds. And so all of this info is why I'm here. Remind myself and reset. I'm 6 years out from RNY with a 30-pound weight gain. So, and you can release it. You can lose it again. Part of it is behavioral. Part of it is mental. And that's what you've got to learn. And this are things that, yes, I teach, and not everyone's clinic teaches this. You're absolutely right. Hey, Edie. But this is why I have the group program. This stuff is not necessarily the stuff that I teach in the group program, but what I do in the group program is teach one-on-one what each person needs for, oh, I wish I wasn't getting notifications. Sorry, Edie. Yeah, most clinics don't. And that's why I end up speaking at support group meetings. Guys, that's why I speak at support group meetings here. And speaking at another one this month in May. Yay! Because they don't address these things. And so, and that's why I created the group, because a lot of people do need the in-depth work that that goes with it and the new tools. And whether that's the behavioral tools of the organization, the planning, dealing with overwhelm, dealing with stress, and all of those things, or if it's really dealing with how to put meal prep together, right? Otherwise, I'm going to go for tonight. Of course, you can always, if you guys aren't in the group, join Bariatric Mindset Mavens. I'm happy to answer any other questions that you have. Again, what we want to do is really retrain your brain, because again, that's the master computer. That's where all the programming is coming out of. And it's more than just making conscious choices. It's really a practice over time that we want to cultivate. So I love you guys. I really created this program to help you grow and to get everybody on the other side of the struggle. And I believe we can all get there because that's part of the path that I've walked. So I love you guys. Have an amazing evening. If you have any questions, yes.